So, in ceremony part two, I started talking about the pipe ceremony and the stem and the bowl. And this is a sacred object, your pipe. You keep it in a special place, maybe under a special cloth, something like that, and you bring it out for the purposes of praying. And over time, it acquires power. Um, it is the Great Spirit. That's the thing. Symbols are not, they don't just stand for something, they are that thing. They have the power of that thing. And so the pipe is the Great Spirit. That's how to treat it. That's how to treat sacred things. And sacred means that which holds highest value for us. So, in a way, we do go into a quiet, reverent kind of attitude when we're in that sacred space. But it's not the same as that kind of solemnity, yeah, and church mousiness, because there's still room for humour. You can still have jokes. I read once the difference between being serious and being earnest is that serious also has a sense of humour. So any ceremony is serious, but it's not earnest. That's a good way of looking at it. Because when there's humour, then there's play. Yeah? When there's humour, there's that sense of contradiction. Yeah, often that's what we're laughing at. Is that sense of ironic contradiction of how daft things are, and that is also playful. And when we're playful, we're whole, and that's what ceremony is about in a way, is to make us whole. So yes, we need some jokes there. Um, so yeah, and in a pipe ceremony, you put the two together. You don't put tobacco in at this point. You just put the two together, and the ceremony has begun. And you pass it round from person to person. You hold the bowl in your left hand, the stem in your right. And when you've finished with your giving thanks and your prayers, you then pass it on to the next person who does their giving thanks and their prayers. And you don't have to get it right. Yeah. I mean, halfway through my prayers, I might well remember something I haven't given thanks for. So, whoops, there's something I didn't give thanks for. So I chuck that in and then carry on with my prayers. So we can be informal about this. And something I do, when we've been around everyone and they've all done their prayers, I go, right, now we'll have a second round for any prayers you might have forgotten. And that is completely untraditional. I haven't heard of anyone else doing that, but it serves a useful purpose because often there is things we've forgotten about. And also, if you know you've got a second round, you know you don't need to get it right on the first round. It takes that pressure off. And so actually, you probably will, you're more likely to remember them all. It's always good to take these kinds of pressures off that we put ourselves under. And you can also pray silently because you might not want everyone to know what it is that you're praying about. And that's great. But the more you can pray out loud, in some ways, the better because it connects us all as a community. It's great to be able to open yourself about what matters to other people. And that creates community. And you may not know these other people. And that can be a beautiful thing about it as well. And this is equally true for the sweat lodge. You're praying there as well. And there may not be people that you know or have met before, but you are open with each other on that deeper kind of level. And that's a beautiful kind of thing. It creates a particular type of community that in the Russian Orthodox Church is called Sobornost. It's a coming together that instead of obliterating individuality, heightens it. And that's a beautiful thing. Because often it can be one or the other. You have to get away from other people to come back to yourself. When you're with others, you can kind of lose yourself a bit. You feel under pressure to think like they do, act like they do, believe what they do. And there's always a lot of pressures around that. If you think independently. If you don't think independently, well, you might just like it. I mean, you saw this during COVID. Some people loved it. They loved being told what to do and to lock down. And they'd still be wearing those bloody masks now if they were told to, joyfully. They're being told what to do. So a lot of people like it. Some of us don't. Um, some of us are childish in that. We just rebel. It's just like, just obey the rules, but don't lose yourself in them. Yeah, you have to kind of obey the rules. Yeah, just do it. You won't lose yourself. You won't lose your independence just by being appearing like everyone else. For heaven's sakes. So it brought out all this different stuff. But yeah, so in the collectives, we can lose ourselves. In religious collectives, you can lose yourself. It can become a cult. Um, they usually are cults to some extent. You know, it's just how people are. You know, it's a cult. It's like, well, that's how people live. Yeah, it's what we are. We're one big cult in many ways. It's just collective humanity. So a, a ceremony like this, it can heighten our individuality while at the same time deepening the sense of community. They kind of go together, and that's a beautiful thing. You are feeling deeply your connection to the spirit and your life, and a connection to its deeper but mysterious unfolding. You feel connected to that deeper pattern that is your life, and you feel this wonderful connection to all the other people around you because they are also in that same place. And in a way, we're all one, but we're all unique. And so the Buddhists have an image for this called Indra's net. So you imagine the universe as this infinite net, yeah, and with all these crossover points, and at each of the crossover points is a jewel, a unique jewel. And the universe is like that. We're each one of those jewels in this infinite net. And that's what Subornost is. It's Indra's net. And that's what a pipe ceremony is. And that's what a sweat lodge is. So we go there to connect with ourselves, to answer our prayers, and also to create community. And we're not just connecting to that community. We create this mini Indra's net, but then we realize it's infinite. It connects us to the community of everything, of the whole universe. So all this is just part of the beauty of it. There's so much beauty when we do these ceremonies. So that's how you do it in its simplest form. Yeah. And that's all we can do authentically, I think, in our culture, is this simple way for now. Because we're new to it and we need to find our own way in and we need to give that time. We don't want to rush in with too many forms. It doesn't mean we can't do ones that have a traditionally set up form. That could be a wonderful thing to do. Yeah. But it's not ours in the same way. So I started on one point towards the end of the last one. I'm talking about someone who on Facebook, who's a great source of information, described exactly how to do a pipe ceremony in a traditional way. Yeah, and he said, you call in the four directions, and you do that this way, and this direction's about this, and this direction's about that, and then you do this with the pipes, and then you do that, and then you do that. Then he says you have the prayer, and then you move on, and it's like then you have the prayer, and then you move on, and it's like, well, the main thing is the prayer. So this is my reservation about the way he put it. He was very good on the form, yeah, but not on the heart of it. The heart of it is the prayer. And that's what I like to talk about. I talked at length about prayer in the last video, ceremony part 2, because that's what it's really about. And the form is there to support that. So in describing a pipe ceremony, I won't give you details about what to do. That is secondary. What matters is what's essential, the heart of it. And you can mistake that. People are so easily drawn into doing it properly through getting the forms right in detail. And that's where this guy gets his kind of authority from, is knowing all the details of those forms. And people look up to that. And yet when it came to the heart of it, it was just a few words. Then you do the prayer. Whereas the prayer is the thing. So this brings us to what chaos shamanism is about, because it's always being at the heart of it. And I think it's a good illustration of that. Chaos shamanism is, in the context of a pipe ceremony, it's about the prayer and the giving thanks, and exactly what those two things mean. Yeah. in a heartfelt kind of way. It's about the ability to talk about the heart and how the heart works in these two ways. Okay, so that's something about the pipe ceremony. And after everyone's made their prayers, then whoever's leading it puts the tobacco in, lights it, takes a puff. I don't think you inhale. You don't have to take any. You can just touch it to your lips if you don't want any tobacco in. But the tobacco, or I'm sure there's probably a book on the symbolism of it. But the way I'm just going to say it is that it is sacred. Often it's made of a mixture of herbs as well. And the smoke from it carries your prayers out to the universe so they can be answered. And so the smoking of it is a contemplative, reflective, and also enjoyable part of it. You're sitting there quietly, remembering your prayers, remembering everyone else's prayers, and also just enjoying the taste of the tobacco. It does have a full, rich taste to it. And even if you don't inhale it, the nicotine does alter your consciousness a bit. It is a medicine. We turn these medicines into poisons very easily, but tobacco is essentially a medicine. It heals and it cures, and it brings the spirit closer to us, and there is a spirit of tobacco. And so the pipe it keeps getting passed around until the tobacco is used up. It all needs to be smoked. And then the ceremony is over and you disperse. And you give thanks to the person who's led it. Traditionally, you bring gifts for them. You bring them some chocolate. You bring them some tobacco. You bring them something. You give something to show your gratitude to the person for holding it. Because they need to, well, when you're holding it, when you're running it, that's a responsibility. You're carrying it. Yeah? It's actually quite demanding. It might be simple, but actually you have a kind of integrity. Yeah? You are a kind of hollow bone. You're carrying the Great Spirit, and that draws everyone else in around that. It makes a big difference who's leading it, and that they have the consciousness to do that, which doesn't mean that they know all the forms. The real qualification for leading anything is that you spent many years with yourself. You become close to yourself. You know about gratitude. You know about prayer. You know about your demons. You know how to be in good relationship with them. All these things. And there's no substitute for just the sheer endurance of the years of doing that. And that is the real qualification for leading or running anything. As I've just described, the pipe ceremony is essentially quite simple. Very simple. But the qualification for leading it takes many years of training. And we may not have someone we train under in our culture. We probably don't. But do it yourself. We can do these things ourselves. We just need honesty with ourselves at all point. Right? Why we're doing what we're doing, and honesty in our speech. Truthfulness. It's another way of putting it. As long as we're truthful about ourselves and with other people, in the subtlest of ways, always, that we say exactly what we mean, that we're really true to how we feel. And when we do something, we're true to ourselves. We don't do something that feels a bit wrong. If we practice that truthfulness all the time for 20 years, that will qualify you to lead something like this. Okay, it looks like we're going to have a part 4, and I'll say something about the Sweat Lodge in that one.